Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're going to be looking at the Vancouver real estate market in December 2024. And we've got this really interesting report here from Dexter Realty, packed with all sorts of stats and insights into what happened last month. So whether you're thinking about buying or selling or just kind of curious about what's going on, this is the place to be.
December is usually a pretty slow month, right? Everyone's, focused on the holidays and all that. But this past December, things were a little different.
A little different. Yeah, the report's saying that there was way more activity than usual, more than we've seen in the past few years even. Like everyone suddenly decided to make a move right before the new year.
Well, yeah, I think it has something to do with those rate cuts the Bank of Canada made in December. Remember those?
Oh yeah,
A whole 50 basis points.
that's pretty big.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think that really motivated a lot of buyers who were kind of just waiting to see what would happen.
Oh, so they were sitting on the fence, and then those rate cuts were like a green light? That's fascinating. You know, the report even mentions realtors getting offers on New Year's Eve.
Wow.
Talk about a last-minute rush, right?
No kidding.
But okay, let's get into some of the actual numbers here. The report says that sales were up 31% compared to last December.
That's a pretty significant jump.
And even more impressive, the whole fourth quarter of 2024 saw a 30% increase in sales compared to the same period in 2023.
So the market's really picking up steam.
Yeah, it really seems like it.
And I think a lot of that has to do with those rate cuts. When rates go down, it just makes it easier for people to buy.
Oh yeah, I mean lower rates mean lower mortgage payments, right?
Right.
So people can afford more houses.
Exactly.
And on top of that, there's all this talk about even more rate cuts coming in 2025. So I think that's making people even more optimistic about the market.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of momentum building.
Momentum indeed.
But speaking of hot properties, there's one type that's really standing out in this report.
Oh yeah. Which one?
Townhouses.
Townhouses, really.
Oh, yeah, they're like the stars of the show right now.
Interesting. The report actually calls it a townhouse tussle, which I love that phrase.
It's a good one.
It really captures the competitive spirit out there.
Yeah, sure.
So let's see. Townhouse sales in December were up 55% compared to last year, but the number of townhouses available only increased by 23%.
So what does that tell you?
Well, it sounds like a classic case of high demand and low supply,
Exactly.
which means
Prices are going up.
way up, I bet.
Definitely.
So if you're thinking about buying a townhouse in Vancouver right now, be prepared to face some stiff competition.
Oh, yeah, it's a seller's market out there.
But hold on a second. We also had some new mortgage rules come into effect in December, right?
Oh, yeah. Those are going to shake things up a bit.
Can you remind us what those new rules are?
Sure. So one of the big changes is the 30-year amortization for pre-sale buyers. And there's also a higher threshold for insured mortgages. Now it's up to $1.5 million.
Okay, so break that down for me and for our listeners. What does all that mean in plain English?
Well, basically these changes are making it easier for more people to qualify for larger mortgages,
Oh, I see.
especially those who are buying pre-construction condos. With longer amortization periods, those monthly payments become a bit more manageable,
Hmm.
even if the purchase price is higher.
Right.
And then with the higher threshold for insured mortgages, people can buy a more expensive property with a smaller down payment.
So these new rules could actually lead to even more demand in the market.
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
Wow. So it's like we're adding fuel to the fire?
It could be. But there's also another factor to consider.
What's that?
The new provincial flipping tax.
Oh, right. That came into effect on January 1st. That's the one that hits flippers with a 20% tax on profits if they sell within a year.
Exactly. So that could potentially discourage some sellers from flipping properties so quickly.
So it's kind of a push and pull, right?
Yeah, there are forces pushing the market up and forces pulling it down.
It's like a real estate tug of war.
Exactly.
Well, this is all super interesting, but I think we're going to have to continue this conversation in part 2 of our deep dive. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back after a quick break.
It really is a tug of war, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to predict the weather. You never know which way the wind's going to blow. So what else did this report have to say about what we can expect in 2025?
Well, it predicts that the market will continue to improve, with more transactions happening overall.
Okay, so more people buying and selling.
Exactly.
But does it say anything about prices?
Mhm.
Will they go up or down?
That's the million-dollar question, and the report doesn't really give us a definitive answer.
Ah, so they're playing it safe?
Yeah, but they do provide some clues. They say that the direction of prices will depend on the balance between buyer and seller activity.
Okay, so if there are more buyers than sellers, prices will go up.
Right.
And if there are more sellers than buyers, prices will go down.
Exactly.
So it's all about supply and demand.
Yep, that's the basic principle of economics.
Okay, so for someone who's trying to figure out if it's a good time to buy or sell, what advice would you give them?
I'd say do your research, look at the trends in specific neighborhoods, and talk to a real estate professional.
So don't just rely on the overall market trends.
Right, because different areas can behave very differently.
I see. So this report dives into those neighborhood-specific
Oh,
details.
yeah, it's got all sorts of granular data.
That's awesome. So it's not just about the big picture, it's also about the micro markets.
Exactly.
So what are some of the specific trends the report highlights?
Well, aside from the townhouse frenzy that we already talked about, detached homes are also seeing a big jump in sales.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were up 31% compared to last year.
Wow, so even with those high prices, people are still buying detached homes.
It seems so.
And what about condos?
Condos are a bit slower, but they still saw a 23% increase in sales.
Okay, so basically everything is selling.
Pretty much.
But I guess the question is, how long will this hot streak last?
That's the big unknown. But the report does mention one factor that could put a damper on things:
Oh, what's that?
the limited housing supply.
Right. There hasn't been a lot of new development lately.
Exactly, and that means there are fewer new homes coming onto the market.
So even if demand stays high, if there aren't enough homes to buy, that could push prices even higher.
Exactly.
It's like a recipe for a bidding war.
It could be.
So this limited supply is something that buyers and sellers should definitely be aware of.
Absolutely.
But okay, let's talk about those different micro markets within the city.
You sure?
You know, like those trendy neighborhoods that everyone wants to live in
Oh, yeah, those are always interesting.
versus those up-and-coming areas that are still a bit under the radar.
Right. Those can be good opportunities for buyers.
So does the report highlight any specific neighborhoods?
It does. For example, it mentions that North Vancouver, Richmond, Burnaby, and New Westminster are all experiencing very tight market conditions.
Tight market conditions. What does that mean?
It means there's low inventory and high demand, which can lead to bidding wars and higher prices.
Oh, so buyers in those areas really need to be prepared.
Yeah, they need to have their finances in order and be ready to move quickly.
So what about those up-and-coming neighborhoods? Any hidden gems that the report points to?
It does mention a few areas that are showing signs of growth, but they haven't quite hit the peak of popularity yet.
So those could be good options for buyers who are looking for more affordability.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom for buyers.
No, not at all.
There are still some opportunities out there.
Definitely.
But what about sellers? What does the report have to say about the sellers market?
Well, it definitely acknowledges that sellers have a bit more leverage right now, especially for certain property types and in certain neighborhoods.
So it's a good time to be a seller.
It could be.
Mm-hmm.
But the report also cautions against being too greedy.
Greedy. How so?
Well, some sellers are holding out for those sky-high prices we saw a few years ago, but buyers are more savvy now. They're doing their research, and they're not afraid to walk away from a deal that doesn't make sense.
So even in a seller's market, you can't just name your price and expect buyers to line up at your door.
Yo,
It's all about finding that sweet spot.
exactly.
Okay, well, this is all super helpful, but there's one thing I'm still curious about. The report mentioned that those Bank of Canada rate cuts really shifted the mood of the market.
Oh, yeah. That's an interesting point.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. So basically, those rate cuts created a sense of optimism. Buyers suddenly felt like they could afford more, and sellers started to feel more confident about listing their properties.
So it was like a psychological boost for the entire market.
Exactly.
But the report also mentioned that this new optimism is tempered by a bit of caution.
That's right.
What are people being cautious about?
Well, some buyers are still worried about potential economic uncertainty, and some sellers are hesitant to list their properties because they're not sure if prices have peaked yet.
So it's a mix of excitement and uncertainty.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, that makes sense. It's a complex market out there.
It is.
But I think this report does a great job of breaking it all down.
I agree.
It's not just about the numbers, it's about the psychology of the market.
Right.
And it's about understanding the long-term trends, not just the short-term fluctuations.
Exactly.
So don't get too caught up in the hype of the moment.
Right. Keep your eye on the bigger picture.
So what are some of the key long-term trends that the report highlights?
Well, one of the biggest ones is the ongoing housing affordability crisis. Rising prices and limited supply have made it increasingly difficult for people to buy a home in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's been a problem for years.
It has.
And it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon.
Unfortunately not.
So what about those new mortgage rules and the flipping tax? How do those fit into the long-term picture?
Well, the report suggests that those changes could have a significant impact on the market over time. The new mortgage rules could potentially fuel demand and push prices even higher, while the flipping tax could help to stabilize the market and discourage speculation.
So it's kind of a wait-and-see situation.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it all plays out.
But at least the report gives us some food for thought.
It does.
It helps us to understand the potential implications of these changes.
Right.
And it also highlights some of the other challenges facing the Vancouver real estate market.
Like what?
Well, besides the affordability issue, the report also talks about the lack of new development, the aging housing stock, and the need for more diverse housing options.
Oh, yeah, those are all important issues.
And it also touches on the impact of climate change and the growing need for sustainable building practices.
Right, those are things that we need to be thinking about.
Absolutely. So it's not all sunshine and roses.
No,
There are some serious issues that need to be addressed.
for sure.
But the report also highlights some potential solutions, like increasing density, promoting affordable housing initiatives,
Hmm?
and encouraging innovative building designs.
Those are all good ideas.
Yeah, so it's a balanced perspective.
It is.
It acknowledges the challenges, but it also offers some hope for the future.
Exactly.
Well, I'm feeling a lot more informed about the Vancouver real estate market, but I'm sure our listeners are eager to hear more about specific areas and property types.
Yeah, let's dive into those details.
Okay, so we're back, and we're ready to dive into the really juicy stuff, the neighborhood-specific details.
All right, let's do it.
So we talked a lot about townhouses in the last part. They're super hot right now. But where exactly are they the hottest?
Well, the report breaks it down by area, and some areas are definitely seeing more action than others.
Okay, like which ones?
Well, for example, North Vancouver.
Yeah.
The average sale price for a townhouse there in December was $1.7 million.
Wow.
Richmond wasn't far behind at $1.6 million.
So those are just the averages. I bet some townhouses are going for even more.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so townhouses are pricey. What about detached homes?
Detached homes are still the kings and queens of the market,
Yeah, I figured.
especially on the west side.
Of course.
The average sale price for a detached home in Vancouver West Side in December was $4.2 million.
$4.2 million.
That's just wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It is. And what about the east side?
Well, detached homes on the east side are still going for a pretty penny. The average sale price there was $2.1 million.
Okay, so still very expensive, but not quite as insane as the west side.
Right.
Okay, so detached homes are still way up there. What about condos? Are they still a good option for first-time buyers and investors?
Well, condos haven't seen the same dramatic price increases as townhomes and detached homes,
Okay.
but they're still a solid investment, especially in certain areas.
Like where?
Well, the report highlights downtown Vancouver and Burnaby.
Oh, yeah, those make sense.
Those areas have a lot of high-density condo developments.
Right. So even though the detached and townhouse markets are going bananas,
Uh-huh.
condos are still holding their own. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so that's good news for people who are looking for a more affordable option.
Exactly.
All right, so we've talked about the different property types. Now let's talk about strategy. What are some key takeaways for buyers and sellers in this market?
Well, for buyers, I would say the most important thing is to be prepared.
Prepared how?
Well, first of all, get your finances in order.
Right.
Know how much you can afford to spend. Get pre-approved for a mortgage.
Yeah.
And then do your research. Know what you're looking for. And be ready to move quickly when you find a property you like.
Because this market is fast-paced.
Yeah, it is. You don't want to miss out on a good opportunity because you weren't ready to make an offer.
Right. Okay, so that's good advice for buyers. What about sellers?
For sellers, I think the most important thing is to price your property correctly.
Yeah.
Don't get greedy. Don't overprice your home because buyers are doing their research. They know what things are worth.
Right.
But at the same time, don't undervalue your home either. You want to get the best possible price.
Yeah. So work with a real estate professional.
Exactly. They can help you determine the right price point.
Okay, so it sounds like both buyers and sellers need to be strategic in this market.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a lot to think about.
There is.
But I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is that knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
The more you understand about the market, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions.
Exactly.
So read that Dexter Realty report.
Yeah, it's a great resource.
It's packed with data and insights.
And it's free.
That's right. So there's no excuse not to be informed.
Nope.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the Vancouver real estate market. I hope you found it helpful.
Me too.
We covered a lot of ground,
We did.
from the big picture trends to the neighborhood-specific details.
And everything in between.
So whether you're a seasoned investor or a first-time homebuyer, I hope you learned something new.
I hope so too.
And I hope you're feeling more confident about navigating this crazy market.
Me too.
All right. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.